Hi everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today we are discussing all the books I need to read before the end of this year. So we're about halfway through the year and I wanted to do kind of a check-in to see where we're at with my reading, because there are several lists of books living in my head that I know I really need to read before the end of the year to hit my own personal goals. Now, that being said, I'm not going to put a ton of pressure on myself to read every single one of these. There's quite a lot on this list, so if I don't get to all of them, I will be okay. It's okay. I'm gonna forgive myself. When we get to the end of the year, I want to look back at this and see, did I read all the things that I featured in this video? Before we get to the rest of the video, I would like to thank this video's sponsor, Dylan Dover, Into the Vortex by Lynne Howard. In his stunning debut, Lynne Howard's Dylan Dover, Into the Vortex casts a potent reader's charm over all youngsters clamoring for a new supernatural hero. Dylan believes he is a typical 12-year-old until he stumbles into a vortex that miraculously transports him to the immortal dimension, a parallel universe. Dylan not only learns that he is a warlock, but he also discovers a twin brother, extraordinary powers, and a secret prophecy that seems to have Dylan and his family at its crux. Dylan, along with his brother and their newfound wizard friend Thea, begin to unravel the mystery that surrounds their birth and the danger that threatens immortals and humans alike. A magical coming-of-age story that will delight any middle grade and young adult fantasy readers. The book does have its own series website that was just recently launched that I will make sure to link down below, as well as a book trailer. Of thousands of books nominated, Dylan Dover has just received an honorable mention in the Eric Hoffer Grand Prize Book Awards for YA Literature, which is an incredible accomplishment. It was also placed as a finalist in the American Book Fest Best Book Awards and has been garnering increasing numbers of 5-star reviews all over. This book sounds incredible and has already been receiving so much praise that is so incredibly impressive. So I am so excited to help get the word out about Dylan Dover, Into the Vortex. So definitely check out all of the information that I will have linked for this down below. And thank you so much to the publisher for sending me this beautiful physical copy to feature. If it sounds interesting to you, make sure to go check out all of that information. And now we will get back to the rest of the video. Let's start with what I know for sure I'm reading, which is the rest of my book club picks for my Patreon book club. If you don't know, I do run a fantasy book club as part of my Patreon that's available to all tiers of patrons, and the remainder of the year is selected except for December. For August, we are reading The Final Strife by Sarah El Arifi, which is one that has been very high on my TBR for a while now, ever since I saw Joshana absolutely love this book. She got me so excited to read it, because usually when she loves a fantasy book, I tend to love that same fantasy book. She's the one who recommended Legends of the First Empire and got me to read Age of Myth, and I will forever be grateful to her for that. So I really do trust her recommendations, and especially if she loves something, it's something that's going to immediately go on my TBR. So The Final Strife, I'm very excited about. This is for sure being read in the month of August. And then for September, we're reading Jade City by Fonda Lee. This one I've read before, but it's been a couple years now since I've read it, and I never continued on with the series after reading the first book, and I have forgotten a lot about this book, so I'm so glad that this was chosen for September, because it's going to give me that push that I really needed to restart the series, refresh my memory on everything that happened in this first book, so that I can finally finish out the trilogy. So Jade City is for sure going to be read in September. And then for October, we have The Library at Mount Char by Scott Hawkins, which is one, if you saw my recent organizing my Goodreads TBR video that I'll link down below, I did select 50 books to prioritize, and this was one of them. It's a fantasy horror standalone that a lot of people have absolutely loved. I don't know much about it. I really don't want to know too much going into it, but I tried to, for our October book pick, feature some books that were darker fantasy or horror fantasy, and this one was the one that was selected. So I'm really, really excited to finally be reading this, and I think I'm going to really enjoy it. And then finally for November, we are reading God Killer by Hannah Kaner, which is one that everyone seemed to absolutely love when this came out in the UK earlier this year. And I know it's getting a US release. I believe in September it officially releases, and I am so excited about it. It's really short, thank goodness, and I've heard it's just incredible. Like the world, the characters, the magic. I've just heard everything about this is so, so good. So many people that I very much trust their opinion on have loved it, so I'm really excited about that. So those are the books I absolutely know I'm reading. I have to for my book club, and that is like top priority for me. So that is the first category of books. Now let's talk about sequels, because I think if I were to prioritize things, the next priority after my book club picks are finishing out series, because that's so important to me. If I don't continue in series shortly after reading the previous book, I will not remember things and I will have to restart them like I'm doing with Jade City. And I really want to avoid having to do that in order to continue on in series. So sequels are an absolute, you gotta read these this year. Because if you don't, then Jessie, you're gonna have to restart the series, and I don't want to do that. So let's chat through the sequels that I'm going to be reading. The first one being The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson, because I am currently doing a reread of Era 2, because guess what? I waited too long between books to finish out this series, so this is where I'm talking about I want to avoid this in the future. I'm finally rereading Era 2 so that I can finally finish out Era 2 with The Lost Metal, because I've heard that The Lost Metal is basically Avengers Infinity War level crossover of Cosmere stuff going on. Like, everyone seems to say that if you like the Cosmere, you gotta read Lost Metal. So I'm really excited to finish it out. My reread of Era 2 is actually going really, really well. I'm listening to it on audiobook, which has been wonderful because Michael Kramer is the narrator, and he's been fantastic. I've really, really liked his narration. And because it's a reread, I'm able to follow it very easily on audio, and it's been wonderful. I remember not loving Era 2 the first time I read it. I gave every book in that series 3 stars, and now upon reread, I'm appreciating it so much more. Each of the books is getting 4 stars or above. So I'm really having a good time with this reread, and I can't wait to finish out Era 2 finally. So The Lost Metal is for sure going to be read. And then because I'm starting Jade City, that means that I have to at least read Jade War. At least. If I can finish out the entire trilogy this year, fantastic. But I know I'm going to have to get to Jade War for sure this year to make sure it's fresh enough in my memory to continue on finally. So I will finally be continuing on with the Jade City trilogy. I'm so excited about it. I don't think it's called the Greenbone Saga. I called it the Jade City trilogy. That's not it. That didn't sound right when I said it. I was like, that's not the name of the series. The Greenbone Saga. I'm finally continuing on, and hopefully we'll finish that one out because I've heard unbelievable things. Everyone seems to love that trilogy. And then I'm also planning on reading The Empire of Gold, finishing out the Daevabad trilogy, which I've been really enjoying. The first 2 books got 4 stars from me. I really like the world. I really think the magic is cool. The characters I'm really enjoying, and I like the politics of this world a lot. So I'm excited to finish this out. Everyone says that the finale is wonderful. I've heard several people say that the 3rd book made this like an all-time favorite trilogy for them, so I'm really excited about it. Hopefully I love it. It's quite chunky, so hopefully I love it. And then also, same goes for The Poison Song by Jen Williams. I gave the first 2 books in the Winnowing Flame trilogy 4 stars. I'm enjoying it. It's very, very unique, very unlike anything else I've read. The creatures are really cool. The world is very cool. The magic is weird. It's all very different. So I'm really enjoying that part of it. The characters aren't like my absolute favorites, but I like them enough to continue on with the series and finish this out for sure. So I'm excited. I'm excited to finish that one out as well. Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. This is one that I started and was just so bogged down in so many fantasy books at the same time I was trying to read this that I was like, no, like I gotta give myself a fantasy break a little bit. So I'm planning on coming back to this, but this is absolutely one I'm planning on catching up with because I know that the 3rd book in this series comes out very early next year. So I'm trying to make sure I catch up with the series before that last book comes out. I'm very excited about this one. And then Arm of the Sphinx by Josiah Bancroft. This is one that I wasn't originally going to continue on, but my patrons and I had so much fun discussing it that we're all going to be reading it next month in the month of August together. And this is one that I don't know if I'll finish out this series. It depends on how I feel about Arm of the Sphinx. I was very kind of middle of the road on Sunlit Ascends. I liked certain things about it, didn't love other things, so it was like a 3.5 star. I'm continuing on because I want to do it with the patrons, but if I'm not feeling it, if I'm not loving this 2nd book, then I think I'm going to feel comfortable saying, okay, this series isn't for me. So this is kind of the make or break book to see if I finish out Books of Babel. So I'm hopeful. Maybe this one will really turn things around for me and really make me love it. So we'll see. And then finally, kind of the least priority, but still something I would like to get to this year is Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which Gideon the Ninth, that's another one that I really loved certain things about it, but the plot was so confusing. So it was like 3.5 star, and I wasn't sure if I was going to continue on, but so many people seem to love this 2nd book, even though the plot once again is confusing. Everyone says it kind of comes together at the end, and it's just kind of so well executed that if you go with the flow, you might really enjoy it. So I'm gonna have an open mind with this one. It's not usually something I like confusing, complex plots, but I really love Tamsin Muir's like humor and writing, and her character work is spectacular. So I'm like curious enough to check this one out. But I've heard that this one kind of stands on its own enough where you don't have to have the 1st book and those events super fresh in your head in order to appreciate this one. So that's why it's not as high of priority. It's not one that I feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't get to it soon, I'm gonna have to restart the series. Like, I think I'm okay to kind of wait on this one a little bit, but I don't want to wait too long. So still would like to get to it before the end of the year, just not as high on the priority list. And then we also have the category of my must-read books of 2023. So if you didn't know, the very beginning of the year, I made a list of 23 books to read in 2023. And they were all like backlist books or books I've just been kind of putting off for a while and just finally want to get read and get done. So I've completed quite a few books on that, but I do have 9 books left on that list. So I've gotten through 14 of them, which is really good. So that being said, the books on that list that I need to get through are Hogfather and Thief of Time, which are both sequels. So once again, kind of like with the previous category, I really want to finish out the Discworld Death Collection before moving on to anything else in Discworld. And I'm waiting until like the holidays to read these two because Hogfather, the 4th book, is Death pretending to be Santa Claus. And I need to wait until the holidays to like be in the holiday spirit to really appreciate that story. So I'm very excited about these two. Discworld for me so far, I really liked Harry Pratchett's writing and his humor, but the death books, I don't know that I should have started with those because they're quite abstract, and Death as a character is it's my favorite part of that series, but he's not in it a whole lot, like not as much as I would expect. So I don't know how I feel so far about Discworld. I'm next going to the like Guards and the Night's Watch, I think it's called. Those books are my next sub-series within Discworld that I'm going to tackle, and I think I'm going to like those a lot more, but I the completionist in me just wants to finish these out before I start on Guards, so I'm excited about those. And then some other books on that list, Child of a Mad God by R.A. Salvatore. I picked this up on a whim. I really don't know much about it, and it's like epic adult fantasy, first book in a trilogy. I have no idea what I'll think of it, but it's been on my TBR for a while. I would really like to finally read it and see if I even want to continue on in this series. Britt Marie Was Here by Fredrik Backman, another one I've had for a while now, and Fredrik Backman is one of my favorite authors. This book I just haven't read. I don't know why. I don't know why I haven't read it yet. So I just need to finally get to it and finish this out and pick up my next Fredrik Backman. Next Year in Havana by Chanel Cleaton. This is a historical fiction I had found at a local Goodwill, so I had grabbed it, and historical fiction is just so hard for me to prioritize picking up when I have so many other things. Like historical fiction in my mind is my least favorite genre, but when I pick it up, sometimes I really end up enjoying it. So this is one I could really enjoy, but it's just been hard for me to prioritize because I have shiny new fantasy books that I always want to pick up more. So that's why I put it on that list. I just finally need to get to it and figure out if I really like Chanel Cleaton, because she has a lot of historical fiction books that all sound very good. The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This was a cover buy for me. I've not heard the best things about this book, so I have no idea what I'll think of it. Again, it's historical fiction, has I think a little bit of a magical realism element to it, so I'm curious. I hope I like it. It's so beautiful. It's so pretty. The Shadows by Alex North. I read The Whisper Man by this author and loved it. That is one of my favorite thriller/horror books of all time. So I had just picked up his next release because I wanted to check out more by that author. And I put this one off last year to read it around Halloween time, and then I didn't pick it up. So now after Halloween passed, I was like, oh, I'll pick it up next fall. So here we are. I still haven't read it because I'm just waiting until around October, around Halloween time, to finally pick this one up. It's really silly. I should just pick it up now and be done with it. But this seems like such a good, like, spooky time read. So we'll see if I actually end up reading it in October. I'm going to put it on my October TBR for sure, and I'll hopefully get to it. Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. I've been meaning to read this. I want to read Everything Cosmere. I can't believe I haven't read this yet. I started it a couple years ago because Elle from Elliot Brooks and I were going to buddy read it, and then I like halfway through stopped because I had some other obligation read, and then I just didn't come back to it. It was silly, so I just need to finally finish it. I really liked it when I had started it. It wasn't that I was disliking it. I was having a good time with it, but it's just one that got lost in the shuffle. So I'd love to finally finish that one. And then The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. This is one that I picked up because I love the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater so much, and I've heard the Scorpio Races is amazing. But again, with YA fantasy, kind of like historical fiction, it's just so hard for me to prioritize those books on my TBR when I have so many like shiny adult fantasy books calling my name. So I just need to get to it. I think I'm going to really enjoy it. I really love Maggie Stiefvater's writing. So those are all of my like must read in 2023 books that I really wanted to get to. So if you're keeping count, like I am, so far we have 20 books to read, which by itself, that should be plenty. I should just cut myself off and say, that is it, Jessie. please just get those done. But I also am very much looking forward to the sequel for the Combat Codes trilogy by Alexander Darwin. The second book, The Griever's Blood, is coming out in December, and I do plan on picking that one up like right around release day as soon as I possibly can, because I loved the Combat Codes so much. So that's another book. So that's 21. Before I would get to that one though, there are a couple of arcs that I had received that I would really like to make sure I prioritize and finally review. So let me feature those really quick. The first is The Sword Defiant by Gareth Hanrahan, which is one that came out in May and had sounded so good. I really was looking forward to this one and just got bogged down with other books that I needed to read at the time and have just not had a chance to pick this one up yet, but I would really love to. It sounds amazing. So that's one that I would like to get to, as well as Gods of the Wordwood by R.J. Barker. Another one, this one came out in June, so another one I would love to get to. It sounded very good. The Embroidered Book by Kate Hartfield. This is one that's like an alternate history with a fantastical element around the time of like Marie Antoinette and her sister. So it kind of takes place in France around Versailles and that era. So it sounded really good and I need to check it out. It comes out in August, so I still had time in my mind to get to it, but I would like to read that for sure. Wildwood Magic by Willa Reese, which is getting released on July 25th. So this is one that I had not heard of at all before until I had seen the blurb from Orbit and was instantly intrigued by it. It's like a fantastical story, I think, that centers around like a magical orchard with like a family of witches. It sounded really good, and it sounded very much like a cozy fall time read, so would love to get to it around that time of year. The Witch King by Martha Wells. This is one that I was really highly anticipating, and now I'm a little nervous to check it out after seeing some recent reviews of it, but still want to check it out for myself, see how I'll like it. And then finally, The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. And I love Christina Lauren, and this is like the only non-fantasy book on my arcs and sequels list, so I should be able to fit this in between all of the very epic fantasy books that I have on this list. So that's everything. That's all the books. That is 27 total books, which I should be able to read 27 more books by the end of the year, but whether I can read all of these books is a big question mark, because a lot of these require me to physically read them, and I'm just not able to fit in as much like physical reading time as I can with audiobooks. So if some of these are available on audio, I'll probably get to them a lot quicker, but I can't listen to fantasy as much really on audio. It just doesn't work as well for me. So we'll see what I do end up getting to. But by the end of the year, I'll look back on this and see what I was able to accomplish. And again, if I don't get to all of them, it's okay. Life goes on, and I can get to them as soon as possible next year. So what are some books that you need to read before the end of the year? I would love to know in the comments down below. And thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye!